Let's dive right into this because it is an absolutely fascinating paradox. For thousands of years, the stars have literally been completely out of our physical reach, and yet they have exerted this massive, undeniable influence on our world. From one single vast night sky, humanity managed to build two totally distinct ways of understanding our place in the universe. On one hand, you have the hard, observable science of astronomy. On the other, the deeply rooted, belief-driven system of astrology. In this explainer, we are going to unpack what we're calling the stellar paradox, looking closely at the source material to see exactly how these two wildly different fields clash, where they actually intersect, and how they ultimately shape our society.
But before we get into the nitty-gritty details, we really have to ask ourselves a fundamental question. What exactly is the universe communicating to us? Think about it. Every single night, people all over the world look up at the exact same sky, but they read it in completely different ways. Some of us look up and want to understand physical phenomena, right? Like how are galaxies formed? How do planets orbit? But then others look up seeking signals. They're waiting for prophecies or a little bit of personal guidance to help them navigate their daily lives. It is a profound, almost beautiful split in human perception.
So let's jump into Section 1, a shared origin among the stars. Because it might seem a bit crazy today, but for millennia, observing the stars for hardcore science and observing them to predict your fate were essentially the exact same practice.
And the proof of this is literally baked right into our language. Take a look at the ancient Greek root word astron, which simply translates to star. That single word serves as the foundational base for both astronomy and astrology. It's a perfect reminder that before we had the advanced tools to separate the physics from the philosophy, humanity's drive to understand the stars was just one, unified endeavor. They both stem from that exact same human desire to know what's out there.
Let's map this out chronologically to really see how this evolved. Go back over 1,300 years, and you have the Chinese charting 28 constellations, largely based on their belief systems. But then, fast forward to 1609, and boom, Galileo points a telescope at the sky. That is a massive turning point, pushing astronomy firmly into the realm of hard science. And that scientific trajectory, it literally propelled us all the way to the moon with Apollo 11 in 1969. But here is the kicker. While we were literally walking on the moon, astrology didn't just fade away. It evolved right alongside science into a deeply rooted cultural practice. In fact, by 2014, astrology was officially registered as a national cultural heritage in Thailand. So we have two completely different trajectories, originating from the exact same starting line.
That incredible split brings us perfectly to Section 2, diverging definitions of accuracy. Because now we have to look at the stark contrast in how these two fields actually define truth.
If one side is relying on advanced space telescopes and rigorous math, and the other side is relying on birth charts and planetary alignments, well, how on earth do they each prove that they're right? The standard of evidence in these two worlds couldn't possibly be more different. This comparison breaks it down brilliantly. On the science side, astronomy demands falsifiable physical proof. If someone comes up with a better, more accurate explanation, the old theories are debunked and tossed out. It is strictly about the physical origins of the universe. But astrology operates on a completely different wavelength. Practitioners will tell you it uses birth factors and statistical patterns, sure, but fundamentally, it is an art of interpretation. And what's really fascinating is that in the astrological world, a 70 to 80% success rate, which is based almost purely on client feedback or returning customers, is considered incredibly accurate.
To really grasp what we mean by the art of interpretation, there's this fantastic story from our source material about Dr. Fizit Giasak. Back when he was just a student, a fortune teller gave him this rather vague prediction. They told him, "You will have to work with bad people." Now, at the time, Dr. Fizit totally scoffed at this. He basically told the fortune teller they were out of their mind. But fast forward a bit, he ended up spending over 20 years of his professional life working as a lawyer, actively hunting down copyright pirates and criminals.
Talk about a delayed reaction, right? But notice how that process of accuracy actually plays out in practice. It relies so heavily on how a prediction is delivered by the reader, and crucially, how the listener retroactively connects the dots to their own life events over time. Dr. Fizit didn't see any truth in that prediction until decades later, when his lived experiences suddenly gave those vague words real, tangible meaning. It's a deeply personal, highly psychological way of finding accuracy.
Now, we're staying completely neutral here, and so does Dr. Saran Pasiachinda. As an expert in astronomical research, he points out a very grounded reality. The physical stars absolutely do affect our lives. I mean,
The sun literally provides the heat that keeps us all alive. However, he maintains that stars do not dictate an individual's personal destiny. He's very clear that astrology is a belief system. It's not a falsifiable science. But instead of just dismissing it, he makes this incredibly beautiful point. He notes that human beings actually need a balance. We need scientific knowledge to understand the mechanics of the physical world, absolutely. But we also rely on belief systems to anchor our morality, to help us navigate what is good and bad.
Which naturally leads us into Section 3, a tool for healing the human mind. If astrology isn't a falsifiable science, we have to ask, what vital role is it actually playing in our modern society? Why is it still so incredibly popular today?
The answer to that lies heavily in psychology. Science communicator Dr. Tanthai Prasad-Kool explains that long before modern psychology, counseling, or therapy ever existed, reading the stars served as a profound psychological tool. It gave people a structured, safe space for two individuals to simply sit down and talk through their life struggles. Whether you're using stars or palms or cards, the medium itself is almost secondary. It's really all about the human connection and the empathy that it fosters.
Building on that psychological aspect, looking to the stars often acts as a massive mirror for society's overall anxiety. Astronomy communicator Korn KT points out something really interesting. When people flock to astrology, it is almost always because the world feels unpredictable. It reflects our deep macro-level worries, things like job security, financial stability, education. Think about it. When the demand for assurance in life vastly exceeds the supply provided by the real world, human beings naturally turn to the stars for comfort.
And that brings us to our final part, Section 4, a medium connecting two disciplines. How can this deeply emotional psychological connection to the stars actually serve as a bridge right back to science? Because rather than viewing them as enemies, they can actually work together.
It turns out, science communicators can brilliantly use the public's widespread passion for horoscopes as a literal hook. Think about it. If someone is already super invested in reading their birth chart, they're already looking at the sky. Educators can take that existing interest and introduce some mind-blowing facts about space. You effortlessly transition a person from checking their daily horoscope into developing a genuine, much deeper curiosity for actual astronomy. You're turning a belief-based interest into a total gateway for scientific discovery. It's genius.
But of course, there is a massive responsibility that comes with this, particularly for the media. When reporters or outlets cover supposedly bad astrological alignments or challenging times ahead, it's their public duty to present diverse viewpoints. Instead of just fueling panic over a scary horoscope, the media should use those moments to empower their viewers, encourage critical thinking, build resilience. We want people to face their real-world challenges with strength rather than being paralyzed by fear.
Because ultimately, whether you are pointing a multi-billion-dollar space telescope at a distant nebula to decode the physical origins of a galaxy, or you're just seeking a little bit of comfort about your personal future for the week, the underlying action is exactly the same. The simple act of looking up, of just taking your eyes off the ground for a minute, provides humanity with an escape from our chaotic world. It gives us this incredible, shared sense of peace, and a reminder that we are part of something so much larger than ourselves.
So, it all comes down to the lens you choose to look through. Are you choosing science or belief, physics or fate, or maybe a little bit of both? Which leaves us with one final thought I want you to ponder the next time you step outside and gaze up at the night sky. Tonight, how will you choose to look at the stars? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll see you next time.